My name is Maya. I'm 24 years old, and about 6 months ago, I moved into a small, slightly run-down craftsman house in Eugene, Oregon. It was supposed to be my fresh start, a quiet place with an overgrown backyard and beautiful pine trees. Instead, it became the place where I learned to never leave my blinds open. It started with the feeling. You know the one. That prickly, cold sensation on the back of your neck that tells you you're not alone. At first, I blamed it on the house. It was old, it creaked, and the streetlights outside threw weird, stretching shadows across my living room wall. But then, the small things started happening. I'd come home from my shift at the local library and notice my back gate was unlatched. I'm OCD about locks, so I knew I hadn't left it that way. Then, one morning, I found a half-smoked cigarette butt on my porch. I don't smoke, neither do any of my friends. But the real panic didn't set in until I recognized the jacket. It was a rainy Tuesday night, around 11 p.m. I was standing in my kitchen, making tea, looking out the window that faces the dark alleyway next to my house. The rain was drumming hard against the glass. For a split second, the headlights of a passing car illuminated the alley. There was a man standing there, drenched, just staring directly up at my kitchen window. He wore a heavy, dark green canvas jacket with a torn reflective strip on the right sleeve. My breath hitched. I knew that jacket. It belonged to Julian. Julian was a guy I had worked with at a bookstore back in Seattle over a year ago. He was quiet, always staring a bit too long, and he had this unsettling habit of remembering tiny details about my life that I'd never told him. When I quit that job to move to Oregon, he gave me a parting gift, a handmade notebook. On the inside cover, he had written, "You can't run away from chapters that aren't finished." I threw it in the trash the same day. He had tracked me down, 400 miles away. I froze in the kitchen, the kettle whistling loudly behind me, but I was too terrified to move. By the time I gathered the courage to blink and look again, the alley was empty. Just the rain. I called the police, of course. They came, took a report, drove around the block, and told me exactly what I expected to hear. "There's no sign of forced entry, ma'am, and standing in a public alley isn't a crime. Call us if he tries to get in." Useful. Truly. The next 3 weeks were a living hell. I didn't sleep. Every text message notification made my heart jump into my throat. I blocked his number, his social media, everything. But then the physical mail started. No return address, just envelopes dropped directly into my mailbox. Inside were printed photos of me, walking to my car, buying groceries, sleeping on my couch, taken through the living room window. He was watching me every single night. The climax happened last Friday. It was a miserable, stormy night. The wind was howling, making the old wood of my house groan. I had locked every door, shut every blind, and jammed a wooden chair under the handle of my back door. I was sitting on my bed, clutching a baseball bat, trying to breathe. At exactly 2:14 a.m., the power went out. The house plunged into pitch blackness. My phone vibrated in my hand. It was an unknown number. I shouldn't have answered, but my thumb hit the screen out of pure, panicked reflex. I put it to my ear. I didn't say anything. For a few seconds, there was only the sound of heavy, wet breathing on the other end. Then, a voice. Low, calm, and terribly familiar. "You look so pretty in the dark, Maya, but you forgot to lock the basement window." My heart stopped. The basement. I had used the old laundry chute in my hallway earlier that day, which connects directly to the basement. Right at that moment, from the floorboards directly beneath my bedroom, I heard it. A heavy, wet thud. The sound of someone stepping onto the concrete floor of my basement, followed by the slow, deliberate squeak of the wooden basement stairs. Step, step, step. Panic completely overrode my brain. I didn't think. I grabbed my phone, bolted out of my bedroom, and ran straight for the front door. As I reached the front hallway, I glanced toward the kitchen. There, standing at the end of the dark corridor, just coming out of the basement door, was a tall, shadow-like figure. The smell of wet canvas and stale cigarettes filled the air. He lunged forward. I screamed, threw the front door open, and sprinted out into the pouring rain. I didn't stop running until I reached the 24-hour gas station 3 blocks away, sobbing, drenched, and screaming for the cashier to call 911. The police arrived at my house 10 minutes later. They found the basement window smashed open. They found the heavy green jacket left on my kitchen table. But they didn't find Julian. It's been a week now. I'm staying at a hotel under a fake name. The police are looking for him, but he has completely vanished. I know he's still out there. He's out there, waiting, watching, and listening. And the worst part? Yesterday morning, I received a text from a new unknown number. It just said, "I like the new house, Maya. Let's see where we move next." My name is Ethan. I'm 26 years old, and a few months ago, I moved from Chicago to a quiet, forested suburb just outside of Seattle, Washington. I started a job doing remote data analysis, which meant I spent almost all my time at home. To make the place more secure and comfortable, I spent my first week installing a complete smart home ecosystem. Smart locks, automated blinds, voice-activated lights, and security cameras covering every angle of the property. I could control my entire life from an app on my phone. I thought I was safe. I thought I was in total control. It started during my second month there. It was a Tuesday, around 3 a.m. I was fast asleep when I was suddenly jolted awake by a loud, robotic voice echoing through my bedroom. Living room thermostat set to 55 degrees. I blinked in the darkness, confused. My smart speaker had just announced a setting change. I grabbed my phone, opened the app, and saw it was true. The temperature had been turned all the way down. I assumed it was a software glitch, turned it back up to 70, and went back to sleep. But the glitches didn't stop. The next day, while I was sitting at my desk working, the smart blinds in my office slowly began to close on their own. 10 minutes later, they opened again. That night, the lights in the kitchen started flickering, not like a power surge, but in a rhythmic, deliberate pattern, like someone was sliding their finger back and forth on a digital dimmer switch. I changed my passwords. I reset the main router. I thought that would fix it. It didn't. On Friday night, it rained heavily. The wind was batting the pine trees against my roof. I was on the couch watching a movie when my phone buzzed. It was a notification from my security app. Motion detected at the front door. My stomach dropped. I opened the live video feed from the porch camera. It was pitch black outside, just the sheets of rain falling under the porch light. There was no one there, just an empty porch. I let out a breath and sighed, about to close the app, when I noticed something in the bottom corner of the screen. The camera angle was shifting. Slowly, smoothly, the lens was panning away from the front yard, turning inward until it was pointing directly through the glass window next to my front door. The camera was now staring straight at me, sitting on the couch. Suddenly, the speaker on the actual camera, the one meant for talking to delivery drivers, clicked on. A static hiss filled the quiet living room. Then, a voice came through. It wasn't robotic. It was a real person, using a voice changer to sound deep and distorted. "You should really look up, Ethan." My blood ran cold. I froze on the couch. I didn't look up at the ceiling where the smart speaker was. Instead, I looked down at my phone. The app now showed that a new, unauthorized user had been added to my home network admin account. The username was just a string of coordinates. Before I could move, every smart speaker in the house began to blare at 100% volume. It wasn't music. It was the sound of heavy breathing, mixed with a low, mocking laughter. The smart locks on my front and back doors suddenly clicked loudly. Unlocked. Then, the lights went dead. Total darkness. The only light in the house was the glowing screen of my phone. I scrambled off the couch, slipping on the hardwood floor in pure panic. I needed to get out. I ran toward the front door, but right as my hand touched the doorknob, the smart lock clicked again. Locked. It was playing with me. Locking and unlocking the doors, trapping me inside my own tech nightmare. From the darkness of the kitchen, I heard a physical sound. Not a speaker. A real, heavy footstep. The sound of a wet boot stepping onto the kitchen tiles. The person wasn't just hacking me from across the world. They were inside the house. They had used the hacked smart locks to let themselves in through the back door while the speakers were blaring. I didn't try the front door again. I sprinted to the hallway, bypassed my phone entirely, and lunged for the small window in the guest bathroom. I threw it open, tore the screen out, and tumbled out into the wet, muddy grass of my backyard. I ran through the woods in the pouring rain, barefoot, crying out for help, until I reached my neighbor's house half a mile down the road. The police went into my house 30 minutes later, with guns drawn. The house was dead quiet. All the smart devices had been completely wiped and factory reset. No footprints were left on the dry parts of the floor. Whoever it was, they knew exactly how to cover their tracks, both digitally and physically. I moved back to Chicago the next day. I live in a regular, old-fashioned apartment now. No smart lights, no apps. I use a metal key to turn a physical deadbolt every single night. But I still don't sleep well, because 3 days ago, I bought a brand new, basic television. When I turned it on for the first time and connected it to the local building Wi-Fi, a single AirDrop notification popped up on my phone screen from an unknown device nearby. It was a video file. When I opened it, it was a 5-second clip taken from my own living room ceiling camera on that rainy night. It showed me jumping out of the bathroom window, and the text underneath the video said, "You were faster than the last guy, Ethan. See you soon."